So I've been using the M1 iPad Pro for 2 weeks now, and I finally feel ready to give you my full review. I didn't really want to do the whole 24 hours later, 3 days later, etc. Instead, I just wanted to be sure I used it for a good while, giving me some time to find out the pros and the cons. I did do a video speed testing the M1 against the 2020 model because I found the results to be very interesting, enough so for a dedicated video. If you're interested in that, I'll put a card at the end of this video, but I'll give you a quick summary of those speed tests today as well. We're going to talk about the design, the speakers, the mini LED display. Obviously, we'll talk about the M1 chip and that insane amount of RAM inside this 1TB model, the new cameras front and back, the Thunderbolt port, that's a really big one for me, and how well it interacts with SSD drives, a Thunderbolt dock, and other accessories. We'll run some heavy apps and files to see how the iPad handles those, and we'll do some gaming tests using the next-gen controller. I know it's a lot. I'll put timestamps in the video description to help you navigate, so go grab a snack and let's ramble.
Hold up, place go wild when I pull up. They all on me like a one thing.
Right, the design. There's really not too much to say about it since it's virtually the same design as we've seen since 2018. And if you ask me, that's a good thing because it looks fantastic and it feels premium. The two main differences you'll notice is that this new iPad is slightly thicker than the previous model, but that is to accommodate the new mini LED display. If you place it on top of the 2020 model, you do see a slight difference, and I do also notice it when I'm holding it, but it's almost negligible. A lot of us were getting a little nervous about this extra thickness, potentially causing issues with the Magic Keyboard, but it fits just fine, and honestly, I don't even feel a difference. The magnets are in all the same places, so no issues there. Now, on the old model, I do have a D-brand skin, and I used to have a Paperlike on there as well, which I removed for this review so I could better compare the displays. The point is that my 2020 model was already thicker than usual because of all the stuff I put on top of it, so I probably shouldn't be surprised that this new model also fits just fine. The real test will be when I apply that D-brand skin and Paperlike to my new iPad, both of which are in the mail. And of course, I'll let you guys know if that actually does end up making it too thick for the Magic Keyboard, but I really don't think it will. I do really love my Paperlike. I hate writing with my Apple Pencil on the bare glass surface of the iPad. It makes my handwriting look terrible, which is why I like using Paperlike, the sponsor of today's video. For those of you who don't know Paperlike, where have you been? Paperlike is a screen protector, but it's much more than that. If you're like me and you like to use the iPad Pro to take handwritten notes, Paperlike is a must-have. Paperlike mimics the feeling of writing on actual paper. You get more control of the pencil when writing, sketching, or drawing due to the Paperlike resistance and roughness. It makes your handwriting look much prettier. It also drastically reduces glare and fingerprints, but because of the nano dots technology, it doesn't make your screen look grainy. If you use an Apple Pencil, I can highly recommend getting a Paperlike. Every order includes a set of 2 Paperlike covers and the application accessories. They offer worldwide shipping, so if you want to try it out for yourself, there's a link below the video. Right, back to the design of this new iPad. The second visible difference is the speakers. They're noticeably smaller on the new model, and there are fewer holes in the chassis. Now, does that mean that the speakers aren't as good on the M1? Let's find out.
Hold up, place go wild when I pull up. They all on me like a one thing. Think I got what you need, well I have none. Hop off, you're a freak and I'm handsome. Slide up in the club like 2 chains. This snake is on top of the food chain. Stand out like a star, no new name. All these words in my DMs.
I don't know if the recording does it justice, but I actually think they sound even better. And on the 2020 model, they already sounded pretty fantastic for a tablet, so definitely no issues with the speakers. The Apple Pencil still snaps on to the same place, USB-C charging the same place, and everything else in terms of the design is also pretty much the same. Unfortunately, that includes the position of the front-facing camera. I really hope that this year they would put it where it belongs, which is on the side. Because who on earth makes calls on a tablet in portrait mode? The whole world is using Zoom these days, and literally nobody wants to go in a meeting and be portrait mode guy. But there have been some improvements. The selfie camera is now a wide-angle lens, and it is really very wide. But the biggest innovation is in the new software functionality Apple calls Center Stage. So basically what this does is it crops in on your face and it puts it in the center of the frame, which does help a little with that awkward side angle. You're still looking in a weird direction, but at least the angle is much better. And because the camera is cropped in, when you move outside of the frame, it can actually use that crop to make it seem like the camera is following you. It also recognizes when somebody else wants to join and there's more than one face on the camera. It will automatically zoom out to catch all the faces. The cameras on the back are pretty much the exact same as last year. The only difference on the M1 is the addition of Smart HDR3 and extended dynamic range for videos of up to 30 frames per second. The LiDAR scanner is also the same, but the new iPad does have more power to use that LiDAR scanner for applications like AR, and that is mainly relevant in the near future, not so much today. Now, let's talk about RAM. The one and only reason I bought the 1TB version is because that is the lowest possible storage option that offers 16 GB of RAM. Anything below that, even the 512GB version, doesn't allow you to configure 16 GB of RAM. I don't know why, well, I do, but anyway, it sucks. I would have preferred to save some money on internal storage and actually make use of that new Thunderbolt port to use the fast SSD drives I have laying around. Now, of course, currently not a single app utilizes the 16 gigs of RAM, but I do expect that to change in the future, hopefully the very near future, since Apple's Developers Conference, WWDC, will be next week. And I do have very high hopes for some serious changes within iPadOS. Anyway, I do feel that I notice a difference in general use. The iPad does feel a bit snappier, and I haven't had a single app close on me in the background. The 2020 model would sometimes just end the session if it got too crowded in the multitasker switcher. Not this one. I never have to close any apps and they always stay exactly where I left them, which means this is where some of that RAM is actually being put to use. Now, I mentioned using external storage, and this has become a lot more interesting with this new iPad because of the new Thunderbolt port. And personally, this is what I was most excited about. A USB-C port is great, and of course it also takes SSD drives, but a Thunderbolt port is much faster and it also offers a lot more options in terms of what you can actually hook up to your device. What didn't change is the fact that we have only the one port. So to make things interesting and to use the iPad with a bunch of peripherals and accessories, we're gonna need a Thunderbolt hub. Now, I've had this CalDigit TS3 Pro dock for quite some time. It's the main hub I use for my 16-inch MacBook Pro. I've tried to hook it up to my 2020 iPad Pro, and you can do it, but it will act like a USB-C dongle and not so much a Thunderbolt hub. Well, that has now changed, so now you can in fact use a drive like this and daisy chain other Thunderbolt accessories to the iPad through this hub. And that's nice because it means that I can connect all sorts of things to my iPad, including my beloved LaCie rugged Thunderbolt drive, which has insane read and write speeds of up to 2800 Gbps, and use a bunch of other accessories at the same time. So what that means, for instance, is that I can use the CalDigit to transfer files from my camera's SD card straight onto my SSD without having to put them on my iPad first. You can also hook up an external monitor to this setup, but unfortunately the aspect ratio will still be a bit funky, but that is a software problem, not a hardware problem. And it is something I really hope to see changed at WWDC. By the way, when you do hook this up to your external monitor, you'll find that the colors look off and the image is a bit weird. To change that, you need to go into the iPad settings, go to display, and then choose your external display and change the HDR settings because that's what's making your image look odd. Unless, of course, you have one of those fancy HDR monitors, in which case I suspect it will look pretty awesome. Speaking of HDR, let's talk about this screen. This Liquid Retina XDR display really is something else. Sadly, it only comes with the larger 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but maybe that will change in the future. Anyway, this HDR display is really superb, and what's cool about it is that it doesn't just let you view HDR content, but also edit HDR content, and that is a big deal for photographers and videographers. The mini LED technology means that there are tons of tiny individual LEDs in the display, more than 10,000 in fact, that can all dim individually, which results in much blacker blacks and brighter brights. This iPad has 1000 nits of sustained brightness and can go all the way up to 1600 nits of peak brightness for HDR content. Just to be clear, that doesn't mean that the entire screen is blasting 1600 nits. It means that it can get that bright when there are very specific highlights inside HDR content. But we don't need 1600 nits of sustained brightness unless you like wearing sunglasses with your iPad. So I ran some speed tests to see whether the chip, the RAM, and the Thunderbolt port actually already make a difference, and they do. The M1 iPad beat the 2020 model in every single benchmark and stress test, and it even loaded and finished all of those tests much faster. I also did a real-world test where I opened up LumaFusion, which is currently the best video editing app out there for the iPad, and here we also saw faster transfers and really buttery smooth timelines. And that is really interesting because I used video files out of my Canon R5, and those are huge and complex files which are way too much to handle for a lot of high-end computers, but the M1 iPad had no problem whatsoever handling these files. I do have to give credit to the 2020 model, which also does a great job processing these files, but the M1 just does it even faster and even smoother. The one thing that annoys me like crazy is the fact that we have no way of knowing how long it's going to take for a file to transfer, since there's no progress bar. That's just stupid, and I really expect Apple to fix this in iPadOS 15. And please, while you're at it, fix the entire Files app, which is the worst thing about this iPad Pro. Alright, what about games? Well, games look super stunning and they run super smoothly. I'm not a huge gamer myself, but I did test a couple of games that are known to be heavy on resources like Genshin Impact, and it has absolutely no problem running smoothly on the iPad. Apple announced that we can now use next-gen controllers to play games and to make use of that haptic feedback, but so far, personally, I haven't found a game that is actually able to do that. Maybe that's just a matter of time until the developers bake it into their updates, but so far, nothing. If you've had better luck than me getting this to work, do drop a comment below. I'd be very interested to hear about your experience. Alright guys, I know this was a long one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it one of these. It really does help the channel. If you like this type of content, I upload twice a week, so feel free to subscribe. As always, links to everything in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.